Hi, this message is for Gary Stearman and Bob Ulrich at Prophecy Watchers. And I want to preface this video by saying that I really appreciate what you do in terms of getting the word out about what the Bible prophesied thousands of years ago and how so many of those prophecies are being fulfilled to the letter right in front of our eyes in this generation. I'm very grateful for what you're doing, and I have great respect for what you're attempting to do. You do not allow comments on your channel, so I really don't have any other way to reach you with this than a video on my own channel. What I want to run by you is a suggestion related to the way that you are advertising your prophecy conference. Last year in 2018, well, first of all, your videos, as you're well aware, when you interview a guest, you only interview guests who have merchandise to sell. DVDs, books, things of that nature, public speaking, and you pitch those items during the show. And I understand. A ministry needs to keep functioning and make money. Not that big of a deal. I think you do it tastefully for the most part. But in 2018, for fully half of the year, 6 months or so, you did that in your episodes or in your interviews, but you also put in at least one, sometimes two, what I can only call infomercials for your own prophecy conference in Oklahoma. And what I wanted to let you know is that if prophecy is a great witnessing tool to get people to take another look at the Bible and see what it has to say, because these prophecies are being fulfilled right in front of our eyes, there's really no rational way to deny that. There's irrational ways, but there's no rational way to do it. To use that as a witnessing tool, it becomes difficult when I send someone to Prophecy Watchers to watch a video and they see not only maybe 2 or 3 pitches for a book or a DVD or a package, but then they also see 1 or 2, again, infomercials for your own conference. And take a look at the infomercials for your conference. They're set up just like any infomercial for a juice orange slicer. I don't know who those people, I don't watch television, but with the screen and the buy now and get the special price, call this number kind of thing.
And Bob, we have the top speakers in the world of Bible prophecy.
A conference like no other. 32 speakers. L.A. Marzulli, Bill Salas, Jan Markell, David Reagan, Mark Hitchcock, Terry James. The names just go on and on. 32 speakers in one event.
Not much time. You need to register now.
So call 1-800-383-76.
But more importantly, you have all these little pictures of your speakers at the bottom. And what you're doing is you're using worldly marketing techniques. And by repeating these people's names and showing their photos over and over and over every single, well, not just every single week, but every single video that you put out, which is sometimes more than one in a week. When you do that over the course of 6 months, I don't know how to look at that other than that is deliberate cult building, cult of personality. The question is, are these speakers really that qualified to speak on what's going on? And I'm not saying they're not. I think many of them are. But there's more to the story. And when you use marketing techniques like putting their photos in front of people's faces every single week, over and over again, and giving them worldly credentials, Dr. so-and-so. And if you don't call them doctor, they get offended. Well, I'm sorry, but I've never heard of, Dr. John. There's a band, but John the Apostle, Dr. John the Baptist, Dr. Paul the Apostle, Dr. Jesus. And yet they seem to have been experts in their fields, bar none. Nobody knew more about what they were saying than than they did. And yet they didn't feel the need to go around calling themselves doctor and such. I hope you see what I'm getting at. You're using worldly techniques with these photos and putting these names out there over and over and over again. You're using the technique of familiarity to get people to give these people credibility on that basis, not on the basis of what they're saying and what they're doing. I live in this car. If you want expertise on homelessness, come to me. And I'm here to tell you, if you want expertise on what I think is the most significant sign outside of the rebirth of Israel, the most significant sign of the end times, the apostasy of the church, how the church, the body of Christ itself, could be taken over by the spirit of Antichrist and absolutely decimated. The people whose photos you're putting on there and you're building them up week after week after week by repeating their names and occasionally interviewing them and selling their wares, they're talking about the apostasy among other things. Let me tell you about the apostasy real quick. When I first was about to become homeless, I went to the church to try to prevent it. I went to the church to ask the pastor to please tell your congregation, mobilize people to stop this. This is unjust. This shouldn't be happening. I did nothing wrong. All these other people broke the law, did horrible things. They were lazy bums accepting paychecks without doing their jobs, working for the government and such. There's no excuse for me becoming homeless. Please help. Among other things, that pastor said to me, well, maybe we'll see your stuff on Storage Wars, which to this day remains one of the most vicious things anyone has ever said to me, including when I was a small child. And you know how cruel kids can be. That was the pastor of a church. And I went to more than 100 Minnesota churches after that for help, and I got none. That's the apostasy. When a brother in Christ comes to the church asking for help, I don't have family. When you become homeless, you lose your friends. All of a sudden, you don't change. You're the same person you always were. Everyone else changes. And I needed help. More than 100 churches did nothing except refer me to government and social services, who government was what made me homeless in the first place, and they don't care if the homeless live or die. Social services have their own self-serving scene going on. Watch my videos if you want to learn about that. I have expertise on that, though I'm not a doctor. I also contacted really as many people as I could who I thought had a heart for something better for the church, a heart for other Christians, a heart for Christ. And I emailed as many as I could, as best as I could, to explain the situation, respecting their time the best I could, asking for help. Again, not that that one individual can just save me from this, but they represent a congregation. They represent a group of people who collectively have incredible power and resources if they would focus it on something instead of just all worrying about themselves and coming together to have a little party at a club they call a church every once in a while. But none of them did anything. They didn't even respond. There were only a few who responded. One of them was associated with one of your guests who likes to be called Doctor. And again, it was one of the most mean-spirited responses I ever got. I'm in a car. At the time, I was really worried I was just going to die. I couldn't get a job legally because I'm homeless. I was running out of money very fast, and this individual was really mean. Mean. Now, these people are qualified to speak at conferences as so-called experts on the apostasy of the church. I would argue someone like me who has gone to them for help has more expertise. I went to one church. They call themselves Berean Church of all things. I'm sure you know what that means. For viewers who don't know, the Bereans are the ones who, when they were told something, They didn't take it at face value. They went and they searched the scriptures to see whether or not it was so. This is a Berean church. They had a huge party going on. Their sound system was so loud. I mean, when I was in a band, I played clubs that didn't have anywhere near the kind of sound system this place had. And I talked to the head outreach pastor. And I said, look, I'm not getting any help at all. And he gave me a brochure and said, here, we send people to social services. And I said, but social services doesn't work. And he argued with me. He argued with me, this comfortable person who's never had to rely on social services for whether he lives or dies. He starts arguing with me about it. So I came back to him with scripture. Specifically scriptures about, how you treat the least of these determines whether, on the left you go here or on the right you go there. Smoking or non-smoking, up or down, how you treat the least of these. So I'm quoting this scripture to him, and he gets mad, he gets agitated, he's trying to get away, and at one point I would dare say he almost was raising his fist toward me. This is the head outreach pastor of a huge Berean church. And that, Gary and Bob, is the apostasy. I am an expert on the apostasy. I didn't set out to be. Many of the people I wrote to are people who you have on your show regularly, people who you have speak at your conferences. They didn't even write back. My degree's in computer science. I know enough about how email works to realize that statistically, they didn't just all get lost in the mail. They reached somebody. They reached an aide or a helper of these people, or they reached them directly. I didn't get a response. One of these Bible or prophecy conferences is held 1 mile away from here. 1 mile away from here in Minnesota. 1 mile away from where I sleep and suffer in misery in this car in third world conditions. When the conference goes on, the traffic builds up so heavy that I can barely move. I have to pay for gas to keep this car running, to generate heat, to try to generate cool, even though the air conditioning doesn't work. And when they're clogging up traffic there, that's that much more gas I have to go out and get money to spend. None of them help. They're inside their containers, their vehicles. They drive to the conference, they have their party, and they leave. And they probably don't even realize that they're passing right by this individual, this homeless Christian brother, each and every time they go to that conference. Why would they know it when I wrote to the person who runs this conference and I didn't even get a response, which presumably means they did not go to the congregations they represent and try to mobilize them to get something done for this Christian brother. My question to you is, if I could go back 2,000 years and I was in a similar situation, if I walked up to one of the disciples or one of the apostles and I said, brother, here's my predicament. I don't have any family. Rome will not let me have a job. If I do what's needed to get a job, they will throw me in prison. Today they call it a felony. In case you weren't aware that homeless people have to commit a felony to get a job. Maybe you weren't aware of that. You might watch my videos, because I have expertise on that, even though I'm not a doctor. If I went to the apostles and I said, I need help, I'm starving, I'm freezing, I'm overheating, almost hemorrhaging in my head in the summer, trying to sleep inside a car that can get over 120 degrees, I'll wake up in a car that's that hot. I have no nutrition. My teeth in 4 years have gone from being really just fine to every single one of them needing to be pulled out now. Every single one of them in 4 years. That's what bad nutrition and the suffering I've gone through will do to you. If I went to the apostles and I said, I need help, brothers, I want you to tell me, which one of the apostles? Is it going to be Andrew? Is it going to be Peter? Is it John? Is it my namesake, Paul? James? Which apostle, I ask you, which apostle is going to tell me, talk to the hand, here's a brochure, here's how you get a hold of Roman social services? Which apostle would treat me that way? You see, there's this, not just an illusion, but a delusion. That when Christians get together and they start talking about prophecy and they start analyzing prophecy, which is incredibly important, no doubt about it, and a fantastic witnessing tool. But when Christians get together and they start making a cult out of prophecy itself, they lose touch with reality. They lose touch with what they're doing, and they lose sight of the fact that their heart is growing colder than the weather I have to sleep in a Minnesota winter. That's why they don't answer emails when I ask them for help. They don't even just say, I'm sorry, I don't have anything to help you with. I will pray for you. I wish you the best, brother. They don't even say that. They just ignore me. They just let me go through my life knowing that those people themselves didn't care. And yet you put them on your site with those little photos and building their names up through repetition as so-called experts on the apostasy of the church. I think possibly in that email I might have facetiously, since I have no way to travel to Oklahoma, but I might have facetiously said, perhaps you should have me talk at your conference, since I seem to know more about what the apostasy actually really truly is than the people that you have, that you're going around building up as experts. Because I have looked at the church in the eye and I've seen the face of Satan. And until you've done that, until your survival, or at least you think your survival, depends upon these people, and you see the kind of evil in these people, the heartlessness, the callousness, the cruelty, the complete 100 polar opposite of what the apostles would have done for me in the same circumstances. Until you've experienced that, you don't understand what the apostasy really is. And if you can't grasp that much, I don't quite understand how prophecy fans, I don't know what to call it. It's a subculture. I don't understand how this prophecy subculture can claim to have any expertise on prophecy. These prophecy leaders I go to, they're afraid of loss. They're afraid of losing everything. Well, you know what? I've lost everything. I have nothing left to lose but my life. And what does the Bible say? To live is Christ, to die is gain. If I die through negligence because none of these people want to do anything to help me, I come out ahead. And I honestly don't know. I mean, I'm not going to sit here and build myself up and say, well, at the Bema Seat judgment, God's going to ask each of these people, why didn't you respond to this brother when he came to you for help? Why did you ignore him? Here, let me show you a hologram of the suffering. Let me fill your heart with the suffering that he personally experienced, that you could have done something to help stop, but you didn't even bother to try. I don't know if he's going to do that or not. I don't think I'm that important. But we don't know what we're going to see, because all we know is we're going to see our entire lives, every thought, everything that emanates from our mouths, everything we did in our whole lives, we're going to see that at that judgment seat. What's the answer going to be? Because the only thing I know is that if I had gone to the apostles with the problem I have, using the exact same language I'm using, looking the same, addressing them the same, they would have done something. And if I had written a letter to John or Peter or Paul, even if an assistant got the letter, oh my goodness, there's a brother in need. Oh my goodness, look at the suffering here. They would do something. And I bet they wouldn't try to do it themselves because they're not walking around trying to save individuals. They're trying to spread the gospel to save, so that Jesus can save. But at the same time, they have to take care of each other. You don't have a group of brotherhood, a church. You don't have that. You don't have a body of Christ if all the cells are fighting each other. That's called a disease. If the cells, one cell in your bloodstream, another, red blood cell and a white blood cell comes up next to it, and they're like hate each other, and one of them runs away because it just doesn't want to deal with the other one. That's a body that's dying. And it doesn't matter if the one that runs away says, "I'm a prophecy watcher. Look at me. I know what's going to happen in the future." I mean, yes, you do know what's going to happen in the future. So do I. Anyone who searches the scriptures knows what's going to happen in the future, and we know that because as we expect to see such and such happen, it keeps happening. Especially going back to 48 with the rebirth of Israel, which is an impossibility, and yet it happened, and yet it was predicted in the Bible. I'm not asking you to change all your ways. I'm asking you to think long and hard about this. As you put those infomercials in your show again this year, I'd like to ask that you don't do that this year. When I went to all those churches and all those religious leaders, and nobody did anything. Nobody helped, and almost none of them responded. There are three, only one of which I think you're even familiar with, although they doesn't speak at your conference, who actually responded to me and corresponded with me a bit. God bless them. And I have great respect for them. They showed how sincere they were. And they didn't just devote all their time to me. Some of them were quick messages, and I could tell it was written quickly. That's okay. They cared enough, and that helped a lot. But out of those 100 Minnesota churches I went to, out of all these people I've written to, who never bothered to respond or do anything or to mobilize the sheer power and wealth of this church, just to help a little guy who doesn't even need all that much, but he doesn't have anything. Please don't put those infomercials in your show this year. I can't use, with any kind of conscience, I can't use those as witnessing tools. I can't send people to Prophecy Watchers to watch your interviews with your guests. Because whenever they go there, all they see is Benny Hinn and Kenneth Copeland and all the other money grubbers. That's all they see. And it negates the purpose of your show as a witnessing tool. You just become someone who's preaching to the choir, but the choir has lost their heart. And while I may not be qualified to say whether they've lost their soul, I'll tell you, I'm scared. The kind of callousness and just mean-spirited viciousness I have experienced from the church in my greatest time of need ever in my life is unfathomable. I want to give you just one quick example of the kind of thing I have to deal with. There's the thing the government has passed called Real ID. One reason I can't get anything that I need, is because I don't have any documentation. I don't have a resident address, and every form that needs a resident address at the bottom says, under penalty of perjury, I certify all information is true and correct. Well, if you can't put an address there, any address you put means that you're committing perjury, a felony. When I go to the government of this great state of Minnesota, The random yahoos who work there, these are government employees. They tell me, just use any old address, doesn't matter. Get a P.O. box. Apparently without realizing you can't get a P.O. box unless you certify an address under penalty of perjury. So these people are telling me to commit a felony. So I go to the news media. Nobody responds except one. One responded. And I guess you could say to his credit, he investigated. He called up one of the agencies in Minnesota who did that. And he said, what's a person supposed to do if they can't put in an address because they don't have one? And they were told, just put in any old address, doesn't really matter. And that reporter came back to me and said, you know what, I took time to look into what you had to say, and this person told me that you're wrong, you can just put in an address. You know what? The little hourly worker he spoke to there at the government agency is not an attorney. They are not a constitutional lawyer. It's a felony for me to put down any address if I don't have one. With this real ID that's coming out, I'm not going to be able to have any ID anymore, which means I cannot get a job, I cannot travel, I cannot do anything. I live in a vehicle. If I get pulled over and I don't have an ID, I lose my home, my car. That's what's coming down the pike. Those are the kinds of things I have to deal with. And all of this would never have even been an issue if the church had just helped me when I asked them to help me in the first place. Because where I work, and excuse my stomach, I am hungry. Where I work, I do a better job than any of the other, 80 or so people who are there. And I don't mean just a better job. It's a night and day difference. And yet they go to a home every night. I come here to a car. Listen to the sound you're about to hear. That was a car door. I am sitting out in the middle of nowhere to make this video. And someone just pulled in right next to me. You know why? Because when they see someone sitting there alone, they think they're dealing drugs, and they come over. Gangsters and everyone come up to me all the time, pull right next to my car and start making signs or giving me looks, till they figure out, whoops, he's not a drug dealer. Or a drug user, I might add. Even as I'm making this video, over there I've got somebody who's staring at me while I'm making this video. Just standing there staring at me, talking into this camera. This is what I have to deal with for doing a better job than some 80 other people in that building. This isn't just at all. This isn't just. And if I can't count on my brothers and sisters in the church to help me with this, to mobilize their resources and their hearts and their souls and their consciences to help when I ask for their help, that's the apostasy of the church. And anything that your guests at your conferences and on your show are talking about with the apostasy, even the worst of the worst that they talk about is mere fluff compared to what I have experienced, which isn't just the spirit of Antichrist, it is the face of Satan. It is evil. Gary and Bob, please do not put those infomercials in your show this year so that prophecy watchers may be used as a witnessing tool without scaring people off because of all the salesmanship and merchandising going on. Create some videos in between. Your subscribers will see all your videos, including the ones about the conference. when I went to all these people and they wouldn't help, you know what? The one good thing that came out of it is it refocused me on the one who I could count on. So I look only to him for assistance now. And since then, I got a job. I've gotten more food. Miraculously, just like Israel being revived, miraculously this ridiculous car is still running. I've had to pay almost everything I've earned for 2 years to keep it running, but it's still running. I'm still alive. Why don't you have that much faith in God? Let Him fill the chairs and the pews at your conference. You might be amazed by what will happen if you let the worldly marketing techniques go, the cult building tactics, if you let the NPR mesmerizing and hypnotizing speech where you, I'm not good at this, but where you sit back and you speak very quietly, and all of your P's are very plosive, and your T's are also very enunciated, and you speak very calmly, and it's hypnotizing, and it's mesmerizing, and it lulls people in so that they will be, ready to accept what it is that you have to say, instead of showing passion and righteous anger where it's due. If you don't want somebody like me, who is an expert on the apostasy of the church, speaking to your conference, that's fine. I'm not asking to, and I can't get to Oklahoma anyway. I could get to this conference a mile away, but you know what? They'd probably show me the door, because that's what the churches in Minnesota have done. If you don't want to have the passion that I have for spreading this message, because we got a problem, Houston, in this church. If you don't want to talk about that, fine. I still think Prophecy Watchers overall is doing a very good job. But if you're going to infuse your shows, your episodes, with these worldly marketing techniques, cult building tactics, building these people up by repetition rather than by what they say and what they do off camera, if that's not where their reputations come from, then I can't use Prophecy Watchers as a witnessing tool. And if Prophecy Watchers cannot be used as a witnessing tool, it's nothing more than entertainment to preach to the choir. And if that's all it is, then what are you doing? You're as good as a dose of heroin. Something to keep people occupied, to keep them inside their homes, staring at some device, so that they don't actually go out and do anything. They don't spread the gospel. They don't help the homeless. They don't sit down and read the scriptures and have introspection to say, is my heart growing cold? Please, God, tell me, am I growing as cold as this world is? Am I growing as cold as what this fellow's describing in this video? Is this happening to me? Am I going to stand at the Bema Seat judgment one day and have all these people who needed something, and I could have done this and I could have done that, and I'm going to, when it's in front of me, I'm going to be like, I didn't even notice. I was so busy watching television, I didn't even notice this was going on. Please, gentlemen, all I ask for here, remove the infomercials from Prophecy Watchers this year. Make some videos that are specific for it, and perhaps in your regular shows, make a reference to, please visit our website, or, click on the link in the description for, a video information about our prophecy conference. Put it in God's hands instead of in the hands of Madison Avenue, or Madison Avenue's techniques anyway. And I bet you'll not only have better success in terms of attendance and making enough money to pay for all that, but I bet you're going to find that when you do that and you trust in God instead of in man, that what the Prophecy Conference does to people is going to improve them, improve the church, improve everything. Because right now, sadly, it's just entertainment. It needs to be something more. John the Baptist lost his head. He was willing to give up everything, and he did. He was eating locusts. They cut his head off. Jesus was willing to give up everything. He was homeless. And yet people look at homeless people today as if they're the scum of the earth. Do you see a pattern here? From what I can tell, the apostles did what Jesus said, and for the most part, sell everything you own and give it to the poor. I don't necessarily think that's what you have to do today. I'm not calling for anybody to do that. I don't want anybody to give up their home or to lose their home or to lose their security. But the raw fear that Christians have today of losing everything is terrifying. If they're not willing to lose just a little bit of their time, maybe a little bit of money, but mostly their time and their effort to help someone like me, a brother in the church, if they're not willing to give that up, when it comes time to say whether they're taking the mark of the beast, what do you think they're going to do? What do you think they're going to do? I mean, they're not willing to even lose a few minutes to write an email back to a homeless brother and say, my goodness, I am so sorry for what you're experiencing. They can't even do that. They can't even be troubled to do that. What are they going to do when Antichrist forces come over there and put them on their knees and stick a knife to their throat and say, you're going to make a choice. You're either with us or you're with them. Which is it going to be? These are people who don't even want to lose a few minutes of their time when a homeless brother emails them or comes to them in person for help. What do you think they're going to do when the knife is to their neck? Brothers, I don't want to have my head cut off. I don't want to experience that. But oh my goodness, will I ever do it if it comes down to that? Because there's not a thing in this world, everything in this world combined doesn't even compare to what I have found by looking only to God. And I suggest that you need to start doing the same thing with all due respect. And I mean that, with all due respect. Stop the worldly marketing, remove the infomercials, just do Prophecy Watchers. Let God take care of advertising the conference. Make your videos for the conference separate. Your subscribers will see it. God will make sure that they see it. And then I can use Prophecy Watchers as a witnessing tool. I hope you'll give fair consideration to what I said here today. Thank you, and God bless you.